want to talk about the sort of the whole company, but I also want to talk about the individual works. So let's start specifically, and then talk some about the whole company. And so let's just go in order. And the first piece by Gustavo Ramirez Sansano. You guys have a long relationship, and which I was thinking about in watching this work tonight. That you knew what he was going to ask of the dancers and the kind of expansive movement vocabulary. So can you talk a little bit about the choice to bring him with that kind of movement vocabulary into the, I mean, you have other works of his in the repertoire.
Well, Gustavo and I go back to his very first piece ever. He was a dancer at Hubbard Street, and I was forming Luna Negra Dance Theater in Chicago. And he was just performing, and he came to me at one point and said, I'm really interested in choreographing. And I said, absolutely, let's do something together. Why not? You know, this is a young company. This is a good moment. And he created Flabbergast. And since then, we've had that relationship, and he took over Luna Negra, and he continues. And why I brought it to Ballet Hispanico, why I brought him, is because, you know, a lot of what we do as artists is create relationships with other artists. Mm-hmm. And that's one very simple answer. But the bigger answer, and I said the more complex answer, is that his work tends to really expand, as you said, the dancers. First, their vocabulary, their stamina, their ability to move differently. And this is a repertory company, so we have many different styles, but I have to continuously look at what styles combine together. And so although he has a lot of gestural movements and hand coordination and quick movements, there is still a strong sense of line. And anything in Ballet Hispanico has to have a strong sense of form and line.
So in coaching the dancers and working with the rehearsal director and you giving notes about the sort of traveling through space, which is fearless, and then very different from how they have to be much more centered in the next piece.
But then it helps them for the next piece because they're fearless in their up and down, right? In their strictness and in mine. It's very interesting how these different forms support each other, change the way the dancer manipulates space, and their energy themselves as well.
What about the relationship with the costume designer? He's a fashion Angel Sanchez from Venezuela. How did that relationship start?
So that was another relationship I had. Angel Sanchez is a very well-known, he does bridal work, he does high fashion, haute couture, but he has this movement about the work that he has as well. So I invited Angel to think, would you like to create something? He had never done anything for dance, so he was very interested. And then I brought those two together.
All right, well, talking about that costume leads us immediately into
the costume.
The costume, that dress. Let's talk about Annabelle Lopez Ochoa's gorgeous dance. And I mean, I'm thinking you don't learn to do that once the costume is made. That had to be part of for the opening section with the long flamenco skirt. That had to be in there in the rehearsal process to make that material. Mm-hmm.
So let's tell some tales. So Ballet Hispanico has a long history of flamenco. Our founder, Tina Ramirez, was a flamenco dancer. So we have a school of dance, 800 students a year, and the kids all have a background. They take flamenco class. So we have these amazing flamenco teachers. And so of course, Annabelle herself also trained in flamenco early on in her career. And so along with what she knew, we brought in teachers, flamenco specialists, to understand how to use batecola. It's a particular technique. Of course, she was, giving it another contemporary flair, so that complicated everything. But so it was a lot of collaborative work around that costume.
So you have, when the company was here in 2009, you did Annabelle's work, Locked Up Laura, and so you had an idea going into this commission what a duet felt like. But how is it different with her, seeing her work with the ensemble?
Well, it's a long-term relationship, so we have 5 works of Annabelle. And Annabelle and I also met in Chicago. So we were moving on for Ballet Hispanico, we discussed, okay, a duet is good to get everybody in the mood, and everybody was there in the room learning the duet. Then when she came in to the ensemble, she had already worked with a piece with 6 men. And so she had not worked with the women and the men together. So it was really interesting how she was taking things from, I feel, that other piece, not the vocabulary, but the feeling and the sense and the use of the space, and adding on with the women.
So, and then the final work on the program is your delightful work. And I got thinking about, like, company class every day for you guys is a ballet class, right?
Ballet class every day.
But then, so how do you keep this social dance aspect lively, fresh, social feeling without it becoming too much of a technique? And we see it I think we see it most clearly in this work, that we see the relationships between the dancers, and the partnering has much more sophisticated partnering than we would do in a nightclub. But could you just talk a little bit about that?
Well, you know, we do a lot of actually salsa classes when we tour. It is the way we bring community together with us. The dancers teach salsa. They work with students and teach salsa or flamenco. You know, some of the folkloric forms are important to Ballet Hispanico because it's our history. And so there is that. But a lot of it comes from me, from working with them. Jenna, who did the duet, her first, was it her first performance? We had a party afterwards, and I go directly to her. She had newly joined. I said, "Come dance with me." So I know she may have been a little nervous, or she seemed nervous, but she needed to feel salsa. You know, what is that Caribbean movement? And so a lot of it is me sharing with them that experience and what that is, and what that movement quality is.
Could you talk about, in your work in particular, we really can see and hear the music so beautifully. And could you just talk about how you're working with the dancers to train their musical ears, which then informs the way they're dancing?
That's a great question. I think all of the work that we do is musical. It's because I love the music of Latin America, and when we use it, it is so essential for me to share the subtleties as well as what everyone knows, but to really hone their ear with that musicality. So we work on that. A lot of it is each choreographer that works with the dancers, but sharing that is important. Also, we had the pleasure of working with Paquito de Rivera live. So they got to really experience this music in a way that you can't with a recording. I mean, the recording is great, but when Paquito is on, he is on. And that pas de deux with live musicians really starts to develop and hone.
It's a whole other kind of partnering.
It's a whole other kind of partnering.
Uh-huh. So could you say something about what kinds of guidelines or limitations when you're inviting somebody to make a work, what you're thinking about that makes it Ballet Hispanico appropriate?
Wow. Yes, I tend to ask choreographers to explore their cultural background in a contemporary context, which means sometimes removing some things, but keeping things that are very accessible, that people understand, that see that's culture, or sometimes utilizing music. Usually there's an idea. With Gustavo, it's always been that we've had conversations. Oh, the general public needs to see this. And a lot of the time I go into it thinking, what are the stories that have to be told by us now, right? What is it? What do we have to take back that has been appropriated and shared in our way, right? Because that's what happens with music, and people take it and they do it one way, and then all of a sudden we have this, that's what tango is, or that's what this is. And so I ask them to play with that, retake, redo, think about it, refurbish it, reconstruct it, deconstruct it.
And so the name of the company, when Tina Ramirez named it, does it feel like it has a whole sense of history to it? But naming a company today, you might not choose to use either the word ballet or Hispanico. But of course, the legacy is critical to this company and companies with this kind of longevity. Could you just say something about how the past supports you, but also sometimes maybe feels like something you could leave behind?
Okay, let me answer that by telling you my personal story, because I was a dancer with Tina, and so back in the I'll say it, back in the early '80s, when I was dancing, Hispanic was still okay. You know, we called ourselves Hispanic, and at Ballet Hispanico, I went through a real transformation. Ballet Hispanico was the place that gave me my nerve to discover cultural identity even stronger, to venture into it deeper, because I had taken so many years to forget and become what people said, assimilate, right? So Ballet Hispanico gave a lot back to me. And so in giving that back to me, you know, Hispanic was fine. After I left Ballet Hispanico and I came back, you know, a lot of things changed, and you know, I understood who I was as a Latino and not a Hispanic. So that is a trajectory that I think a lot of immigrants, I'm an immigrant, so immigrants go through, you know, that identity mambo, as I like to say. You know, you go 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. You know, who am I today? What am I supposed to be socially, you know, socially as the voyeur, socially when I'm with you or when I'm with them. So there's a lot of, it's complex. And there is no right answer. Everyone has their own journey. But for today's, if I can bring it back to your question, I think for today, Ballet Hispanico honors Hispanic. And we own it because it's our name. It's what our founder at the time, with what she was given, was being used. So it's important to hold on to that. However, we now celebrate who we are because we've all changed from the 70s and 80s, because that term was used a lot in the 70s. And so Latino for us captures everyone in Latin America, everyone who's come here, some people in Spain who move back and forth. There's so much transcontinental interaction. So we like, at Ballet Hispanico, we like to use Latino when we talk about the work. It's Latino work.
Desde que despunta el día, que ay caray, que caray, que caray, que caray, que hay que ver la fiesta o que se verdan caray, que hay que ni la hambre la vamos a sentir, que mire usted qué gracia tiene este país, que ay pero qué gracia tiene este país. Es que yo no lo puedo negar, decirlo me hace feliz, porque yo nací mulato.